The scariest thing about the Backrooms is not a monster jumping out from the dark. It is the feeling of entering a place that should not exist. A hallway that keeps going. A wall color that feels almost familiar but wrong. A carpet that looks damp before anyone tells you it is. And a space that does not feel haunted as much as it feels aware. Hi, I'm Rob. Welcome back to A Constantly Racing Mind, where every frame tells a story. This is where we cover sci-fi, horror, action-adventure, prop culture, and all things geek. And before we get into it, check out our Intelligent Filmgoers apparel. The link is in the description, and if you're heading to the theater, do not forget the Runtime app, especially for a movie like this, where walking out at the wrong time could break the spell. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to A Constantly Racing Mind, and hit the notification bell for more horror film analysis. Today we're talking about Backrooms, the 2026 A24 Sci-Fi Horror film. This will be a non-spoiler review. Backrooms is a sci-fi horror or liminal horror film directed by Kane Parsons. Writing duties fell to Will Sudik, and the film stars Chiwetel Ejiofor, Renate Reinsve, Mark Duplass, Bennett, Lukita Maxwell, and Avan Jogia. This is an A24 film. It comes out on May 29, 2026, and it runs about 105 minutes, which is 1 hour and 45 minutes. Now, during the pandemic, I watched a lot of YouTube, and it seems like just about once or twice a day, videos about liminal spaces showed up in my feed. The Backrooms was a big part of those feeds. Like Clark, I don't know why I watched, but I did, quite a bit. The concept was intriguing, and I was hooked. Backroom takes one of the internet's most unsettling modern myths and gives it a grounded, character-driven anchor. The story is set in the 1990s and follows Clark, a man who runs a furniture store called Captain Clark's Ottoman Empire. While working late one night, he discovers a null zone hidden within the store. Basically, it is a portal that leads into the Backrooms. And once he enters, he finds an endlessly expanding maze of yellow wallpaper, damp carpet, humming fluorescent lights, and hallways that seem to stretch past logic. What begins as a strange curiosity turns into something much darker. Clark keeps going back. He starts trying to map the space. He starts trying to understand it. And at the same time, he's talking through this growing fixation with his skeptical therapist, Dr. Mary. Now, that is the hook that makes the movie work. This is not just, what if you got lost in a creepy place? It is, what if you found a place your mind could not explain, and instead of running from it, you kept needing to go back? So, before I get deeper into the film, it is worth saying this. Backrooms is not built like a traditional haunted house movie. It's not chasing a jump scare every 5 minutes. It is not trying to turn its mythology into a clean instruction manual. It is working from a different kind of fear. The fear of empty space. The fear of repetition. The fear of walking through something that looks man-made but feels impossible. This is the whole power of liminal horror. You know the materials, wallpaper, carpet, office lighting, drop ceilings, hallways, rooms. But the more familiar it looks, the more wrong it feels. What I appreciated most is that Backrooms does not over-explain itself. It trusts the environment to do the work. The Backrooms themselves are the main source of dread. Not gore, not constant screaming, not a parade of creatures, just a slow, suffocating realization that this place has rules, but they are not your rules. Every hallway looks almost familiar. Every turn feels like it might lead you back to where you started. And every new room gives you that uncomfortable feeling that reality has been copied by something that did not fully understand the original. That is where the movie is strongest. It understands that the Backrooms are scary because they feel empty, but not abandoned. There is a difference. An abandoned place feels like people have left. The Backrooms feel like people were never supposed to be there in the first place. The cast is the film's strongest asset. Chiwetel Ejiofor brings a quiet, unraveling intensity to Clark. He makes the descent from rational business owner to obsessed explorer feel believable. Clark is not played like a horror movie idiot. He's not someone making dumb choices just to move the plot forward. He is curious, then he is fixated, then he is trapped inside the question. And that question becomes more dangerous than the place itself. Renate Reinsve gives the film its grounded counterweight as Dr. Mary. She serves as the audience's surrogate. She is skeptical, concerned, and trying to understand whether Clark is describing something real or disappearing into his own mind. Finn Bennett also fits well into the movie's documentary adjacent side, as part of the camera crew Clark brings in to document the space. What works is that none of these characters feel like horror archetypes. They feel like real people who have stumbled into something their minds were never built to process. A major part of the conversation around Backrooms is Kane Parsons himself. Parsons started making Backrooms shorts on YouTube as a teenager, using tools like Blender and After Effects to create these strange digital nightmare spaces. His web series helped define the modern screen version of Backrooms, and now he is making his feature debut with A24 backing him. This is important because this does not feel like a studio grabbing internet lore and sanding it down into a generic horror product. The movie feels connected to the thing that made it the idea spread in the first place. Parsons has also said the film stays in strict continuity with the web series, and that he is not interested in giving the audience concrete answers. That is the right instinct for this material. The backroom works because the mystery feels bigger than the explanation. And the craft is where the movie really separates itself. For the feature, the production built more than 30,000 square feet of practical backroom sets in Vancouver. Kane Parsons and James Wan discussed the scale of the set directly on A24's podcast. And Chiwetel Ejiofor has talked about being surprised that something this physical had not already been built before. That practical scale matters. The actors are not just pretending to be inside an infinite labyrinth. They are walking through one. You feel that tangibility in the frame. The walls look like they smell like mildew. The carpet feels like it has been absorbed years of bad air. The lights hum with a frequency that get under your skin. And because so much of it is physically there, the movie has texture. It has weight. It has a strange, ugly beauty to it. Now, the sound design is one of the most important pieces of the movie. The backrooms are not silent. They buzz, they hum, they breathe in a mechanical way. The movie understands that fluorescent lighting can be its own kind of threat. The low electrical sound becomes a pressure system. It sits on you. It makes even stillness feel active. And when the sound drops into something wrong, the movie gets under your skin. Not because it's loud, because it feels like the space has changed before you notice it. Jeremy Cox's cinematography is key to why Backrooms works visually. This is not a movie that can rely on gothic shadows, haunted mansions, or beautiful decay. The horror comes from something much uglier and more ordinary. Yellow walls, low ceilings, damp carpet, office lighting, rooms that feel like they were designed by nobody and maintained by nobody. Cox has to make that space feel real enough to touch, but wrong enough to reject. That is a hard line to walk. If it looks too cinematic, it loses the internet-born weirdness. If it looks too flat, the movie can become visually dull. The strength of the photography is that it understands the backrooms are supposed to feel cheap, stale, and endless. The camera does not romanticize the space, it traps you inside it. And that fits the whole point of the movie. The backrooms are not scary because they are visually beautiful, they are scary because they look like a place you have to have seen before but never wanted to stay in. Greg Ing's editing is just as important as the cinematography because Backrooms lives or dies by rhythm. This is a film built on repetition, hallways, corners, rooms that look almost the same, doors that may lead nowhere, a character trying to map a place that does not want to be mapped. That can become hypnotic or it can become tedious. Ing's job is to keep that line tense. He has recent horror experience with Long Legs and The Monkey, but Backrooms asks for a different rhythm. This is not just about cutting the scares. It's about knowing when to withhold, when to hold a shot too long, when to make the audience question whether anything has changed, and when to let that emptiness become the threat. In a normal horror movie, the edit often tells you when to be scared. In Backrooms, the edit works better when it does not tell you that right away. It lets the space breathe. Then it lets that breathing become uncomfortable. The music for the Backrooms was composed by Edo Van Breemen and Kane Parsons, and that combination kind of fits the film's whole identity. This is not a score that needs to announce itself with big horror stingers every few minutes. The Backrooms does not need that. The space already feels wrong. What the music does is blur the line between score and environment. Kane Parsons has talked about being drawn to ambient music that lingers instead of moving like a normal song. He's pointed to artists like Aphex Twins, Boards of Canada, and Burial as part of the inspiration behind the score's atmosphere. Now that makes sense because Backrooms is built on a very specific kind of fear, not panic, but unease. Edo Van Breemen is a Canadian composer and a musician based in Vancouver. What makes him a strong fit is that his background is not limited to traditional film music. He has worked in live performances, electronic music, documentary scoring, and immersive spatial sound. He was also associated with the Vancouver band Bastronaut, whose music blended indie, electronic, and jazz-influenced textures, which is great as the Backrooms does not need a normal horror score. Now, the best way to describe the music is the hum of fluorescent lights, the electrical pressure in the walls, the low buzz of a room that should be empty but does not feel dead. That is the sound language of this movie. Van Breemen's credits include Afflicted, Air, Hollow in the Land, The Monkey, Keeper, and The Backward Class. And with Backrooms, the score has to feel less like music placed over the image and more like something the building is producing. Low electronic pressure, fluorescent hum, empty room ambience, mechanical dread. That is the sound language this movie needs. And Van Breemen's background in immersive sound make that connection feel natural. In a film about impossible spaces, the music has to do more than create a mood. It has to trap you there. The production story behind Backrooms is almost as interesting as the movie itself. A24 took a real gamble on Kane Parsons, giving a young director a reported budget of around $10 million and letting him build this internet-born nightmare on a massive physical scale. The project also brought in serious genre support with James Wan's Atomic Monster and Sean Levy's 21 Laps Entertainment involved alongside A24. The movie was filmed primarily on sound stages in Vancouver, where the team built a practical backroom maze of about 30,000 square feet. That's important because the actors are not just reacting to green screens. They are walking through a real maze of yellow walls, damp-looking carpet, low ceilings, and humming office lights. Parsons also brought his digital background into the process. He designed and pre-visualized the sets in Blender, and then those digital layouts were used to help build the physical spaces. So the movie has this interesting blend of internet horror, digital design, and old-school practical production. That is why the Backrooms feel tangible. The space is not just an effect. It is a place the cast and crew had to move through, and that physical reality helps sell the feeling that Clark has stepped into something endless. Chiwetel Ejiofor is one great casting choice for Backrooms because he specializes in controlled intensity. His character has moved through prestige drama, science fiction, thrillers, and major studio films. But the common thread is pressure. In my favorite, Serenity, Chiwetel Ejiofor plays the operative, a calm, ruthless alliance agent whose quiet conviction makes him terrifying. Because although he does see himself as evil, he is a monster. He also sees himself as necessary. In 12 Years a Slave, he carried unbearable emotional weight with restraint. In The Martian, he played a problem solver facing the impossible. In Doctor Strange, his character belief system cracks after seeing the cost of bending reality. Clark is not just scared of the Backrooms, he becomes obsessed with them. He finds a place that should not exist. And instead of walking away, he keeps going back. Ejiofor makes that descent believable by showing fear, intelligence, curiosity, and collapse without turning the performance into a horror movie theatrics. As in Serenity, he maintains the same controlled stillness. This is important to his performance in Backrooms because Ejiofor knows how to make obsession feel disciplined before it turns dangerous. He gives the movie a human center, and for a story built around empty rooms and impossible hallways, that human center is what keeps the whole thing from becoming an internet concept stretched to feature length. Renate Reinsve is a strong choice for Backrooms because she brings grounded intelligence and emotional precision to the screen. Her breakout role in The Worst Person in the World made her an international name, and that performance showed how well she can play someone caught between uncertainty, self-examination, and emotional pressure. She won Best Actress at Cannes for that role, and it remains the clearest example of the quiet control she brings to a scene. That fits Dr. Mary perfectly. In Backrooms, Dr. Mary is not just Clark's therapist, she is the audience's anchor. Clark is pulled toward the impossible while she is trying to keep him connected to reality. Reinsve can make listening feel dramatic. She can show doubt, concern, curiosity, and fear without overplaying it. And in a movie built around obsession, empty spaces, and a reality that refuses to behave, that kind of restraint matters. She helps ground the film. While Clark is drawn deeper into the maze, Dr. Mary reminds us that he is losing outside of it. What elevates Backrooms beyond a simple haunted house exercise is the film is not only about being lost in a maze, it's about obsession. Clark does not just discover the Backrooms, he starts building his life around them. That is the more interesting psychological idea. At some point, the danger is not only the portal, or the maze, or the endless hallways. The danger is that Clark has found something so impossible that ordinary life cannot compete with it anymore. That gives the movie a human anchor, because the Backrooms are terrifying, but Clark's need to keep returning is what makes the story sad. What worked best for me was the atmosphere. The movie knows what is scary about the Backrooms and does not overcomplicate it. The yellow walls, the damp carpet, the dead office lighting, the rooms that feel designed but not designed for people. The film also benefits from Chiwetel Ejiofor's performance. Keeps Clark grounded even when the story moves into stranger territory. That makes the obsession feel human instead of silly. And the practical set work gives the movie a physical quality that a fully digital version would not have. What makes Backrooms work beyond the basic idea of a scary maze is that the film is really about what people carry into that maze. Backrooms are not just empty rooms and endless hallways. They feel like a physical version of the subconscious. It is a hidden space where fear, memory, loneliness, and unresolved pain have nowhere else to go. That is why the movie hits harder than a simple creature feature version of the story would have. The horror is not only that Clark finds a place he cannot understand. The horror is that once he enters it, he cannot fully get away from himself. That is the deeper fear the film is playing with. You can leave a room, you can turn around in a hallway, you can try to map the space, but how do you escape your own patterns? How do you get out of a loop that is already inside you? Clark's obsession becomes the emotional engine of the movie. The Backrooms give him something impossible to chase, and the more he chases it, the more isolated he becomes. The film uses that endless, sterile emptiness to explore loneliness and disconnection. It shows how the human mind keeps trying to find meaning, even a place that may not have meaning at all. There is also a bigger social anxiety under the surface. The Backrooms look like the ugliest parts of modern life stretched into infinity. Drop ceilings, bad carpet, fluorescent lights, blank commercial rooms. It is a world built from spaces we were never meant to live in, but somehow spend our lives moving through. That makes the maze feel like a kind of self-made purgatory. Not hell in the traditional sense, but a sterile prison made out of familiar human environments. As of right now, Backrooms is landing pretty well with critics. Rotten Tomatoes has it at 88% on the tomato meter from 125 reviews, with 73% verified audience score. Metacritic is a little bit more measured, but still positive with a 76 Metascore with 37 reviewers, which puts it generally favorable range. IMDb is sitting around 7.3 out of 10, though that number is still early and will probably shift as more general audience rating comes in. So the early read is clear. Critics are responding to the atmosphere, the craft, and the way Kane Parsons expands the internet horror concept into a real theatrical experience. The audience score is a little lower, which makes sense for a movie with this slow, strange, and mood-driven. This is not going to work for everyone, but it is clearly connecting with people who are tuned into the wavelength. And there are no mid-credit or after-credit scenes, so go home. And what I like is that the film does not treat the Backrooms as simply evil. The space feels more neutral than that. It reflects people. It feeds on what they bring into it. Fear, trauma, ego, obsession, memory. The horror comes from the way the maze turns those things back on the characters. So for me, Backrooms is not just about getting lost in a strange place. It's about what happens when the strange place gives shape to everything you thought you had buried. Not everything works perfectly. The film demands patience. There are stretches where the repetition of hallways, doors, corners, and fluorescent rooms start to feel Less like dread and more like waiting. For some viewers, that slow rhythm will be the point. For others, it may feel like the movie is holding back for too long. And because the film avoids over-explaining its mythology, anyone looking for a full rulebook or a clean answer to every question may walk away frustrated. But for this story, that restraint mostly works. Mostly. The Backrooms will not feel fully solved. Backrooms is not a haunted house. It's an invitation to get lost, and once you step through that door, there is no guarantee you will find your way back. What makes the movie work is its understanding of the fear at the center of the myth. It's not just fear of being chased, it is the fear of being misplaced. Fear of entering a space that looks familiar enough to recognize, but wrong enough to make your body reject it. For those, when Backroom hits, it gets under your skin in a way few horror films manage. It does not always move fast. It does not always give the answers you want. But for those, it leaves you with that uneasy feeling that somewhere behind the wrong wall, under the wrong light, there is a place that may have been waiting for you to notice it. Ultimately, Backrooms is a strong, patient atmosphere first horror film. This film may not appeal to everyone, but it works for viewers who enjoy slow burn dread, liminal spaces, internet horror, and movies that prioritize mystery over explanation. However, one of my issues is that the final act starts to answer questions the movie was better off leaving alone. The Backrooms are scariest when they feel unknowable, but by the end, the film leans too hard on exposition and familiar horror mechanics, which makes the mythology feel smaller. I really had to think about the Backrooms. I knew what I was in for, and overall, I liked the plot and the good, solid production value. It took me a long while to warm up to the paranormal activity films. Like the Backrooms, I enjoyed the concept. However, the pacing was just too slow for me. I liked that the writing team introduced themes of sensory deprivation, loneliness, and obsessive thinking, but it didn't really develop or expand on them much, and the Backrooms didn't really make me feel anxious or apprehensive. The performances are one of the film's strongest assets. Chiwetel Ejiofor is outstanding here, giving a performance that stands out with some of the best work of his career, including Children of Men and Serenity. But Renate Reinsve may be the real standout. She brings a grounded, emotionally sharp presence that keeps the movie connected to something human, even as the world around her becomes more impossible. I also really enjoy the film's world building and tension. Backrooms feels like a waking nightmare, beautifully claustrophobic, deeply unsettling, and easily one of the strongest creepypasta adaptations we have seen. What impressed me most is how successfully it takes an internet video concept and turns it into a full theatrical experience. It does not just stretch the idea out, it builds on it, gives the audience a tense, edge-of-your-seat horror film that almost still keeps the mystery intact. Almost. With all that being said, I'm giving Backrooms a solid 3 out of 5. See this one if you like A24 horror, slow burn, atmosphere, analog dread, found footage, adjacent storytelling, and movies that make ordinary spaces feel hostile. Skip it if you get claustrophobic, or wait for streaming if you need fast pacing, constant scares, or clear answers to the mythology. This is a movie built around mood, space, sound, and obsession. Hey, that's my non-spoiler review of the Backrooms. Let me know what you thought of the movie. Did the liminal horror work for you, or did the slow pace lose you? And if you are into sci-fi, horror, action, adventure, pop culture, and all things geek, make sure you like, subscribe, and stick around. Now, don't forget to check out the Intelligent Filmgoers apparel, link in the description, and don't forget the Runtime app so you don't miss the most important parts of the movie. This is a constantly racing mind where every frame tells a story. Signing off, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.